Why did he throw her a broken rifle? Why, in the middle of chaos, would a commander hurl a useless weapon at the one person he thought least capable of firing it? Captain Stone's voice carried across the compound like a blade dipped in contempt. "Take it, Secretary. At least pretend you know which end shoots." His words cut through the rattle of gunfire and the concussive thumps of mortars slamming into forward operating base Saber's perimeter. Emma caught the weapon before it clattered to the dirt. The move was effortless, her hands steady even as debris rained from the concrete walls. To Martinez, the young private pressed against her side, it looked almost casual. Reflexes so clean, so practiced, he blinked twice to believe what he had just seen. Her fingers slid across the weapon's body, brushing the safety selector, tracing the chamber, movements instinctive, almost unconscious. The kind of motions that belonged to someone who had spent a lifetime living with rifles, not the quiet staff sergeant the others thought they knew. Outside, the alarm screamed. It was 1500 hours. The sun bore down like an executioner, and the desert air was thick with smoke and static electricity. Fob Saber wasn't much, 65 soldiers, concrete walls, and not nearly enough ammunition to withstand the storm now falling upon them. 180 insurgents. That was the number they'd counted. Twice their strength, maybe more, pouring down from with the certainty of wolves closing in on a wounded deer. Emma had been here 7 months, filing reports, logging supply inventories, typing in the corner where no one paid attention. She was the one who never complained about the heat, who brought water to the younger soldiers without being asked, who smiled politely when dismissed. No one ever asked why she would sometimes lift a handful of sand in the morning, letting it fall through her fingers, eyes narrowing at the way the grains drifted. No one asked about the dog tags she wore with the numbers worn smooth, as though someone had tried to erase them. Stone barked again, dragging Martinez out of his haze. "Cross, get your skinny ass to supply and bring more mags before we're all dead." The captain was a tower of a man, 6'4", built like the linebacker he once had been before the army. He didn't hide his opinion of her. Women belonged in offices, stateside, typing forms. Yesterday, in front of everyone, he had called her our dead weight. But dead weight doesn't feel the hairs on the back of their neck lift at the sound of a rifle. Dead weight doesn't stop mid-sprint because something in the chaos doesn't line up with randomness. Emma did. She tilted her head, listened, counted the breath between crack and thump. 950 meters, she whispered, northwest ridge line, behind that cluster of rocks. Martinez looked at her like she'd spoken in another language. "What did you say?" His knuckles were white around his rifle, his youth written in the tremor of his hands. "There's a sniper, northwest ridge, 950 out. Tell Stone he needs to shift 3rd Squad south or they'll get cut apart." The boy hesitated. "How could you possibly?" "Just tell him." He obeyed, ran back to the captain with a mix of fear and hope. Emma watched as Stone dismissed the message with a wave, face twisted in irritation. Then came the shot. The sang again, and a man from 3rd Squad dropped screaming, blood soaking his shoulder. Stone froze. His eyes flicked to Emma. For the first time there was something behind the anger, unease. The radio screamed, "Tower 2 is down. They're inside the wire." Those words were death itself. Inside the wire meant the walls no longer mattered. The enemy was among them. By the time Emma made it to the command post, the scene was unraveling. Insurgents poured through a breach on the western wall, the defense line breaking like glass under a hammer. Stone's voice cracked as he called fallback orders. He spotted her crouched behind a barrier, still carrying the rifle. "Cross, where the hell are those magazines?" But then his eyes narrowed, the rifles across her back, the way her body moved from cover to cover. "What are you doing with those? You qualified expert on PowerPoint, not rifles." An RPG slammed into the comms antenna. The blast shook the earth. For a heartbeat, silence fell, broken only by the eerie wail of feedback from ruined radios. And in that silence, Emma heard it again. A pattern, the voice of a battlefield only she seemed to understand, coordinated fire, intentional shifts, not chaos, control. Her gaze tracked across the ridge. Southwest, 8 degrees right of the burned-out technical. There, she didn't doubt it, she felt it. Stone's hand clamped her shoulder. "I don't have time for your guessing games, secretary." He shoved his own M4 into her chest with a sneer. "Here, let's see what our paper pusher can do. Try not to shoot yourself, princess." Emma said nothing. She took the rifle. Her hands moved automatically, checking the bolt carrier, scanning the chamber. Her eyes narrowed, jammed solid. Stone laughed, the sound harsh. "Figures, just like your brain when you try to think tactically." But she was already moving. 9 seconds later, the rifle lay disassembled across the dirt. Casings cleared, fouling stripped, reassembled. Immediate action drill executed with a speed that left Martinez's mouth hanging open. No one laughed now. She flowed across the compound, sliding into position like a shadow that belonged here. Her voice, low and steady, keyed into the radio without her even realizing, calling wind corrections, plotting enemy movement. Her words too calm, too precise for someone who supposedly belonged behind a desk. Colonel's voice cut across the net. "Who's calling wind on this frequency?" She didn't answer, she couldn't. Her eyes were locked on the ridge. Smoke cleared just enough to reveal a figure, separate, elevated, surrounded by guards, gesturing, directing. "I've got eyes on their commander," she whispered to Martinez, who crawled up beside her. "Southwest Ridge, 950 out." "That's impossible," he stammered. "You can't even see that far." But she wasn't guessing. The radio antenna on his back, the way the RPG men flanked him, he was the heart of this storm. Her lips moved with certainty. "In 45 seconds, he'll shift fire to the ops center." Stone overheard, his jaw tightened. And then the mortar rounds fell exactly where she said they would. He stared at her, suspicion turning into something colder, fear. Emma dropped prone, steadying the rifle. Her voice cut through Stone's tirade. "Captain, either help or get out of my way. People are dying." Something in her tone made even him step back. The wind picked up. Sand swirled in ghostly arcs. Martinez's eyes widened as he noticed it. The scar on her shoulder, deep and circular, the mark of years spent pressed into the steel embrace of a rifle stock. The kind of scar you only earn after thousands of hours behind a scope. Her breath slowed, her pulse steadied. She whispered to herself a mantra she hadn't spoken aloud in years. Full value, right to left, 6 to 8 meters per second. The damaged barrel, the bent sight post, the desert shimmer, all accounted for, all absorbed. She squeezed, nothing. The click of a dead trigger froze her veins. The commander was moving. The moment was slipping. Tap, rack, bang. Violence and grace, the rifle cycled, chamber hot. Time stretched, a single line drawn across the edge of the universe. Her finger pressed, the shot cracked. 950 meters away, through dust and chaos, the man's head snapped back. His body fell, lifeless, boneless. The commander was gone. For 4 long seconds, nothing changed. Then the battlefield fractured. Enemy radios screamed panic. Their lines faltered, wolves without a shepherd. Martinez whispered, "Holy," but couldn't finish. Stone's mouth hung open. Nobody makes that shot. Emma was already moving, transitioning, calling contact at 250, dropping enemies with controlled pairs. No hesitation, no wasted movement. And in the chaos, the radio carried its voice. "Outstanding shot, who made that?" Stone hesitated, his voice uncertain. "Sir, it was Sergeant Cross, admin NCO." Silence. Then across the net the colonel's voice, hushed and disbelieving. "Phantom, after all this time it can't be." The sound of rotor blades rose in the distance. Emma exhaled, dust swirling around her lips. Her hands were steady, but inside, something had shifted, something she thought she buried years ago. And the battlefield wasn't done with her yet. Why was the battlefield suddenly quiet? Not silent, never silent, but different. The rhythm of fire had changed. It was scattered now, uncertain, the insurgents no longer moving as one. Their leader lay dead in the dust, 950 meters away, and his absence spread through their ranks like a fracture-splitting stone. Emma stayed prone, her cheek pressed against the rifle's stock, eyes sweeping for the next threat. She didn't savor the shot. She didn't smile. She only breathed steady and slow because she knew what came after. Chaos rarely ended clean. Contact left 250. Her voice rang clear, controlled. Martinez turned, following her line, firing bursts that missed more than they hit. He was shaking again. But Emma's rounds landed, crisp, precise, enemies folding into the dirt as if gravity had suddenly remembered them. Captain Stone had gone pale. His voice, usually so sharp and commanding, faltered as he keyed the radio. "Sir, it was Sergeant Cross. She's the one who—" His reply came after a long silence. "Say again, did you say Cross?" The pause that followed was heavier than the battle itself. Then almost a whisper, "Phantom. After all this time, it can't be." Martinez looked at her, confusion clear in his young face. "Phantom, what does that mean?" Emma didn't answer. She stayed focused on the ridge, on the thinning line of insurgents now retreating in fits and starts. She knew that word. She hated it. It wasn't hers anymore. It wasn't supposed to be. The ground shook with a different sound. Low, rhythmic, a pulse that made the sand dance at her feet. Rotor blades. The air filled with the whoop-whoop-whoop of black hawks ripping through the desert sky. Two of them, dark shapes shimmering against the horizon heat, descending fast. Their door guns opened fire, streams of tracer ripping across the ridges, chewing into the enemy lines. Emma's stomach twisted. These weren't regular army birds. No markings, no serials, modified rotor systems. She knew them too well. They came in hard, flaring over the fob, ropes snaking down as operators in black kits slid with precision that made infantry drills look clumsy. Navy SEALs, the cavalry, but this wasn't coincidence. Not here. Not now. Martinez ducked as they landed, awestruck. SEALs? Here? Why the hell would they send SEALs to a hole like Sabre? Emma didn't answer, because she already knew. One of the men paused as his boots hit dirt, weapon raised, scanning. A master sergeant graying at the temples, his eyes locked on Emma. Even through ballistic shades, recognition flared. He hesitated, only for a second, but long enough for Emma to feel it like a blade in her ribs. She tore her gaze away, racked the rifle, and returned to her sector. But she knew. The past was no longer past. Within minutes, the combined firepower shattered the assault. Enemy fighters streamed back over the ridges, leaderless, desperate, abandoning weapons in their haste to escape. Smoke drifted, thick and acrid, clinging to the broken concrete and blood-stained sand. The base was still standing, barely. Stone staggered to his feet, helmet askew, his chest heaving with more than exertion. He was watching her now, not with contempt, not even with anger, but with something closer to fear. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Emma stripped the mag, checked the chamber, her motions smooth, detached. She wanted silence. She wanted this moment to vanish into the desert like sand caught in the wind. But silence never lasts long in war. A third bird appeared on the horizon. Bigger, heavier. A command helicopter bristling with antennas and comm arrays. It circled once, slow, deliberate, before setting down just outside the fob. Emma's chest tightened. She already knew who it would be before the man even stepped off the ramp. Major General, Commander of Joint Special Operations Command. The kind of man who never set foot in a place like Sabre unless something monumental had happened. Colonel snapped to attention, his posture rigid, voice sharp. Around him, soldiers straightened despite exhaustion, saluting, trying to make sense of this impossible arrival. Emma stayed where she was, dust on her face, rifle still slung across her shoulder. She didn't want to move. She wanted to disappear. But walked with purpose, boots crunching on broken stone until he stood in front of her. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, locked on hers. "Master Sergeant Cross," he said quietly. The words froze the air. He wasn't asking, he was declaring. "Or should I still call you Phantom?" The name hit her like shrapnel. Years of hiding, of burying herself in paperwork, of being nobody, they crumbled. Her voice cracked. "Sir, I'm just admin now." Shook his head, lips tightening. "Not after today. Your contract was voided the moment you picked up that rifle." He held out a tablet, flicking through files. Her past stared back at her in grainy images and sealed reports. Operation Desert Wraith. 4 years ago. She and her spotter holding off 150 insurgents for 18 hours so Delta Force could extract a downed pilot. Martinez's mouth fell open. Stone staggered, his face pale, sweat shining on his skin. He knew the story. Everyone in the special operations community did. Phantom was a legend whispered about in training, in bars, in hushed tones that carried awe and dread. But Phantom was supposed to be dead. "I requested the discharge," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I requested the new identity. After Desert Wraith, after I could." Her throat closed. The memory was a knife she couldn't pull free. His face softened, but only for a moment. "The man you killed today. Our intel confirms he was trained by the same network that set up the Desert Wraith ambush." Emma's blood ran cold. "You're telling me this wasn't random?" "Nothing about today was random," said flatly. "Someone wanted to draw you out, to confirm you were still alive." The desert wind howled across the broken fob. Dust stung her eyes. She lowered her gaze, jaw clenched. "So now they know," she whispered. "Yes," replied. "Which is why I need you back on active status. You're the only operator who's faced this network and survived." The silence between them stretched, heavy, suffocating. Around them, soldiers watched in confusion, unsure what they were witnessing. To them, Emma Cross was a quiet admin NCO, but standing in front of them now was Phantom, one of the most lethal snipers in modern history. Checked his watch. "The bird leaves in 20 minutes. Pack what you need, Phantom. It's time to come home." Emma's hands trembled where they gripped the rifle. She looked at the base, the soldiers lining the landing pad, their faces bruised, bloodied, exhausted. Some saluted her, others just stared. She had saved them, but they didn't know the cost. As the rotor wash kicked up, Emma turned away. She thought of the bodies of debts unpaid and ghosts that refused to stay buried. She stepped toward the waiting bird, each stride heavy, each breath a reminder. She had tried to be Emma Cross, admin specialist, but the battlefield had stripped her down to the truth. Phantom still lived, and the world had just remembered her name. Why had she come back to life? The question clawed at her as the helicopter lifted from Fob Sabre, its rotors tearing dust into blinding clouds. Emma sat strapped to the bench, hands folded over the rifle across her knees. She hadn't wanted it. She hadn't asked for it. But it was there again, like an old scar reopening, bleeding into the present. Martinez's wide eyes lingered on her as the bird pulled away. He didn't speak, but his silence carried weight. He had seen her, not the admin sergeant who filed reports, not the polite, quiet woman who typed faster than anyone. He had seen Phantom. The bird banked hard and the fob fell out of view, shrinking into the desert. She should have felt pride, relief. Instead, her chest felt hollow. Across from her, the master sergeant with the graying temples, the one who had recognized her, watched quietly. He hadn't said a word since boots hit the ground, but his presence was heavy, unspoken recognition in every glance. He knew who she was. He knew what she was. Emma closed her eyes, but the darkness didn't bring rest. It brought the smell of burning rubber and flesh, the dust choked with cordite. Her spotter, his voice in her ear, calm even as chaos swallowed them. 18 hours of holding a line that was never meant to be held. A pilot bleeding out behind them, Delta trapped by waves of fighters that never seemed to end. She remembered's laugh, dry and sardonic, as they chambered their last magazine. We'll write the manual on impossible stands, M. Chapter 1. Two idiots with rifles and nothing left to lose. She remembered the flash, the blast that threw her sideways, the ringing in her ears as she crawled toward him, his blood on her hands, his last words, words she had buried so deep she almost couldn't bear to recall them. She had left part of herself there in the rubble of Desert Wraith, the part that could laugh, the part that could hope. When the dust cleared, Command had given her a choice: vanish into paperwork or be swallowed whole by the legend they had created. She had chosen silence, chosen to die quietly so Phantom could stay dead. Until today. The helicopter shuddered as it cut through crosswinds. Emma opened her eyes, sat across from her now, his presence dominating the space without effort. He didn't need to speak to Command. He was Command. Why me? Emma's voice was low, nearly lost beneath the roar of the rotors. Leaned forward slightly. Because you've already faced them. Because you know their patterns, their tactics, the way they move. And because today proved what I already suspected, you're not done. I was done, she said sharply, surprising herself with the edge in her tone. I buried that life. I buried her. I buried Phantom. Studied her, his gaze steady, unflinching. You can bury a name, but you can't bury what you are. Her fists tightened around the rifle's sling. She wanted to argue, to scream, but the words wouldn't come, because part of her knew he was right. The bird descended toward a larger base, a staging hub bristling with antennas and vehicles, alive with movement even in the fatting sun. As the ramp dropped, the air smelled of jet fuel, dust, and sweat. She stepped off, boots striking ground that felt too familiar. Men saluted as he passed, their eyes flicking to Emma with curiosity, whispers trailing in her wake. She ignored them. She kept her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the desert stretched endless, merciless. Inside a dimly lit operations tent, maps sprawled across tables, red circles marking ambush sites, black pins marking dead operators. A network connected, intelligent, deliberate. Pointed to the ridge where Emma had taken her shot. Signal intel confirms it. That commander was part of the same network from, same training signatures, same command structure. They've been growing in silence, rebuilding. And now they know you're alive. Emma stared at the map. Her pulse slowed. Her breath deepened. A part of her, the part she had fought to silence, stirred awake. They'll come for me, she said quietly. Nodded once. Yes, which is why I'm not asking you to come back. I'm telling you, because if they want Phantom, they'll hunt until they find you, and I'd rather you be on our side when that happens. Her eyes burned. Anger, grief, fear, all tangled together. She thought of the look in his eyes before the end. He had known she would survive. He had known she would keep fighting, even when she didn't want to. Her voice broke as she whispered, I don't want this. His expression softened just slightly. None of us do, but some of us are built for it, and whether you want it or not, Phantom, you're still here. The words settled into her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. She dropped her gaze to her hands and calloused, trembling just enough to betray her. She hated that he was right. Outside, the camp echoed with the metallic clatter of weapons, the low rumble of generators, the sharp bark of orders. Soldiers prepared for tomorrow, as if tomorrow was guaranteed. Emma stepped out of the tent, the evening light painting the desert in shades of blood and fire. She stood alone, staring into the horizon. Martinez approached quietly, still wide-eyed, still shaken. He hesitated, then spoke. Sergeant, what are you? Emma didn't look at him. Her voice was soft, distant. Someone I didn't want to be. He swallowed hard but didn't push. He just stood with her, the silence stretching between them, heavy but human. As the sun dipped low, shadows grew long across the sand. The desert held its breath. Emma closed her eyes. In the darkness she heard his voice again, calm, steady, whispering across time. You can't run from who you are, Em. You can only choose what you do with it. Her chest rose, fell, a deep breath. Tomorrow would give her orders. Tomorrow the world would remember Phantom. But tonight, standing in the desert twilight, she allowed herself one moment of grief, one moment of quiet. Because she knew the truth. Hiding was over. And war never forgets its ghosts. Why was the tent so quiet when she walked in? It wasn't silence. Radios buzzed with static. Boots scuffed against the dirt floor. A printer chattered somewhere in the corner. But underneath it all was a stillness, a held breath, the kind that falls when something unexplainable sits in the room. Emma stood just inside the flap, helmet tucked under her arm, eyes scanning the briefing space. Men and women crowded around the map tables, their gazes sliding toward her, some curious, others wary. She could feel it, the shift in air whenever her presence registered. Whispers had spread faster than fire across dry grass. The desk sergeant with the impossible shot, the admin who wasn't admin at all, the name spoken in disbelief, Phantom. She hated it. Stood at the head of the table, his posture rigid, his hands clasped behind his back. His voice cut clean through the tension. Take your seats. Chairs scraped, papers shuffled, the air thickened. Emma sat near the back, as far from the center as she could manage. Martinez slid into the chair beside her, his youthful energy coiled tight, unable to hide the awe in his eyes. Across the table, Captain Stone sat stiff, his jaw clenched, a bruise darkening across his temple. He didn't look at her, but his silence screamed louder than any insult he'd ever hurled. Began, we have confirmation. The network responsible for the ambush, Desert Wraith, has restructured. They've established cells across the region, linked by a command chain more disciplined than anything we've seen from insurgent groups before. Yesterday's assault on Fob Saber wasn't random. It was a probe. And their commander wasn't just a local leader. He was trained, resourced, directed. He pointed to a satellite image. A ridge with impact craters, bodies scattered like discarded toys. Emma forced herself not to flinch. They wanted one thing, continued, to confirm if Phantom was still alive. Now they know. All eyes shifted toward her. The weight of their stares pressed against her skin like heat. Emma sat, though inside her chest tightened. His tone dropped lower, heavy. This means escalation. They will come harder, smarter. They will hunt her and, by extension, anyone near her. Stone finally spoke, his voice sharp, edged with bitterness. So what are you telling us, General? That our lives are collateral because a ghost decided to pick up a rifle? The words struck like blows. Emma kept her expression still, but the shame flickered in her chest. Martinez shifted beside her, anger flashing across his face. Captain said, his voice iron, she didn't choose this. She saved your base, your command, your life. Without her, you'd be ash in the dirt right now. Stone's mouth pressed tight. He didn't argue, but his silence was thick with resentment. Emma didn't respond. She couldn't, because part of Stone's accusation was true. By firing that shot, she had exposed herself, and by extension, all of them. The briefing continued. Maps lit with red markers, supply routes marked with thin, fragile lines. Orders rattled off with precision, but Emma barely heard them. Her mind wandered, tracing the shadows of memory. The firefight in, the way his blood had soaked into her gloves. She pressed her thumb into her palm now, grounding herself, forcing the ghosts back. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped back. Soldiers filed out, their voices low, careful. Emma stood, helmet under her arm, and turned toward the flap. Cross. The voice snapped behind her, Stone. She froze. He approached, his eyes hard, his voice low enough not to carry. "I don't know who the hell you really are, but I know one thing: you brought this on us. You dragged ghosts into my command. Don't think for a second I'll forget it." His words were venom, but beneath them Emma saw something else. Not just anger, not just pride, fear. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She simply held his gaze for a beat, then turned and walked away. Outside, the night air was cooler, tinged with diesel and smoke. Floodlights cut through the darkness, carving sharp angles across the compound. Emma found a shadowed corner near the perimeter, leaned against the wall, and finally let her breath out. Martinez found her there as if drawn by gravity. He shifted nervously, hands shoved into his pockets. "Sergeant," he hesitated. His voice was small, almost boyish. "Is it true that you were Phantom?" Emma closed her eyes. She didn't want to answer. She didn't want to give that name oxygen. But the kid deserved something. "I was," she said softly, "once." He swallowed hard. But why hide? Why pretend? Her gaze lifted toward the dark sky where stars pricked the void. Her voice was distant. "Because sometimes surviving isn't about living. It's about disappearing, about choosing not to be who the world demands." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, with quiet sincerity, he whispered, "But you saved us. You saved me." The words cracked something inside her. She looked at him, saw the earnestness in his eyes, the raw gratitude. And for the first time in years she felt not pride, not relief, something smaller, something fragile. Hope. The moment didn't last. A sharp whistle blew, cutting across the compound. Soldiers sprinted toward vehicles, voices shouting orders. Emerged from the command tent, his stride quick, urgent. "Convoy prep, we move in 20. Phantom, you're with me." The name again, spoken like a command, not a choice. Emma's chest tightened. Phantom, Emma, Phantom. She no longer knew where one ended and the other began. She slung the rifle across her shoulder and followed. The convoy rolled out under moonlight, engines rumbling, headlights blacked out, night vision goggles glowing green in the darkness. Dust rose in ghostly trails behind them. Emma sat in the back of a Humvee, Martinez across from her, Stone up front with the driver. Road ahead in the command vehicle. The desert stretched endless around them, flat and merciless, shadows shifting like predators at the edge of sight. Emma's mind wandered as the wheels bounced over rough terrain. She thought of again, his laughter, his calm, the way he had steadied her hands when she was younger, greener, still learning how to breathe between heartbeats. She had tried to bury him with Phantom, but the truth clawed its way out night after night. Martinez's voice cut into her thoughts. "Sergeant, what happens now?" Emma looked at him. The boy who had been shaking in fear hours ago, who now sat with eyes wide open, trusting her more than anyone else. Her answer was quiet, almost a whisper. Now we find out what it costs to come back from the dead." The desert wind howled outside, rattling the Humvee's frame, and in the distance, unseen, something watched, waiting. Why did the road feel wrong? Emma sat in the back of the Humvee, helmet low, rifle balanced across her knees. The convoy had been rolling for nearly an hour, engines growling, night vision goggles glowing faint green halos across tired faces. Desert stretched infinite in all directions, moonlight painting the sand with a pale glow. But something in her chest told her the silence wasn't silence at all. It was waiting. She shifted, eyes scanning the horizon. Empty ridges, shadows layered against darker shadows. Her pulse slowed, the old rhythm settling in, the one she had sworn she'd never feel again. Martinez leaned forward from his seat, whispering, "Sergeant, you look like you're listening to something." "I am," Emma murmured. "What?" "The desert," her gaze stayed on it has a rhythm, tonight it's off." Stone twisted in the front passenger seat, his voice sharp, irritated. "She's spooking the kid again. Cross, you want to tell us what page of your filing manual says the desert's got rhythm?" Martinez flushed, embarrassed. Emma didn't answer. She couldn't. She knew what she felt. The same unease that had saved her before. The radio cracked. His voice carried steady from the lead vehicle. Convoy holding steady. ETA to checkpoint 90 minutes. Keep comms clear unless urgent. Stone leaned closer to the driver, muttering something Emma couldn't hear. His shoulders were tight, his posture rigid. He didn't like her. That much was certain. But tonight his dislike had sharpened into something closer to obsession. Emma forced herself to breathe evenly. She thought of again, his calm voice, the way he could always steady her nerves when the waiting grew too long. "Patience is the only weapon that doesn't jam," he'd once said. She whispered it under her breath, so softly only she could hear. Then faintly, too faintly for anyone else, the desert spoke. A metallic echo carried across the night air, so small it could have been mistaken for nothing. Not gunfire, not a vehicle, something more subtle. She leaned forward. "Driver, kill headlights now." The man hesitated, confused. Stone barked instantly. "Ignore her, keep rolling." Emma's voice cut sharper, commanding, the tone of someone who had led men through fire. "Kill them, now." The driver glanced between Stone and Emma, frozen. Sweat dripped down his temple. Martinez whispered, "Do it." The headlights blinked off. The convoy plunged into darkness, NVGs flaring brighter in green static. A heartbeat later, the ridge ahead lit with fire. RPG streaks tore across the sky, slamming into the road where headlights would have been. The ground shook, dust exploding upward. "Contact front," voices screamed over comms. Gunfire erupted, tracer rounds slicing green arcs across the night. Emma was already moving, rifle to her shoulder, calm settling over her like a shroud. Her voice rang through the Humvee. "Dismount, flank left, cover fire in 3. Stone spun on her, furious. "I give the orders here." But Martinez had already moved, following Emma, instinct trumping protocol. The boy slid into the dirt beside her, firing wild bursts until her calm voice cut through. "Shorter, controlled, breathe with the trigger." He listened. His rounds grew steadier. Stone staggered after them, cursing, nearly tripping in the sand. His anger burned bright, but even he couldn't deny what had just happened. Her instincts had saved them. The ambush raged. Insurgents poured fire from the ridges, muzzle flashes strobing in the night. The convoy answered with heavy machine guns, the air vibrating with every burst. Emma crawled forward, eyes sharp, ears tuned. The enemy wasn't firing blind. Their bursts were disciplined, deliberate, coordinated. The network again. Her stomach sank. She tapped her radio. "They're targeting command vehicle. Mortars will follow. We need to shift back now." Stone barked into his mic. "Negative, hold positions. That's an order." Emma's jaw tightened. She cut to another frequency, her voice low, calm. "Command, this is Cross. You've got eyes on you. Shift positions now." A pause, then's voice steel wrapped in calm. "Copy, moving." Seconds later, mortars lit the ridge where his vehicle had been seconds before. Emma exhaled. Stone rounded on her, rage twisting his features. "You don't undercut my authority again, you hear me? Not once more." Her reply was soft, flat. "You'd be dead if I hadn't." The words cut him deeper than a bullet. For a moment he said nothing. His jaw worked, but no sound came. Emma didn't wait. She shifted higher on the slope, her rifle finding a stable rest. She scanned, listened. The desert whispered again, patterns, rhythms, the tiny spaces between chaos. There, a figure on the far ridge, not firing, watching, directing. Her chest tightened. Another commander, another spider pulling threads in the dark. She steadied her breathing, adjusted for distance, for wind, for heat shimmer. The familiar math ran through her body like second nature. Then her finger froze on the trigger. Because beside him, half hidden in the dark, was a child. 10, maybe 11. Thin arms, wide eyes, holding a radio. Emma's pulse stumbled. The world narrowed. She saw again his voice in her memory. "You'll face the impossible choice one day, Em, and you'll have to live with it." Stone's voice roared behind her. "Take the shot, end it." Martinez whispered, horrified, "Sergeant, there's a kid." The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. Seconds stretched into eternity. Emma's finger hovered. She could end the threat, save her people, but she'd destroy herself in the process. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. "Not this way," she whispered. Instead, she shifted. A fraction. She aimed not for the commander, not for the child, but for the radio. The shot cracked, echoing across the desert. Sparks flew as the device shattered, the child dropping it in shock. The commander spun, exposed for a heartbeat, enough for the convoy's heavy guns to rip the ridge apart. The ambush collapsed, fighters scattered. The desert fell silent again, broken only by ringing ears and pounding hearts. Emma lowered her rifle slowly. Her breath trembled as it left her chest. She had chosen mercy and lived. Stone stormed toward her, fury blazing. "You disobeyed a direct order." Emma looked up at him, her eyes steady, cold. "No, I obeyed the only order that matters, the one you have to live with when the shooting stops." For a moment Stone faltered, just a flicker, then his face hardened again. But Martinez saw it. He saw the truth Stone couldn't admit, that she had saved them all and saved herself too. Emma turned away, her gaze lost to the horizon. Because she knew this wasn't over. The network had tested her, and now they knew not just that Phantom lived, but that she still carried the one thing they could never predict. A conscience. Why hadn't she taken the shot? The question buzzed through the convoy like static as the vehicles rumbled back toward base. Dust clouds curled behind them, mixing with the acrid tang of gunpowder still clinging to uniforms. Soldiers muttered in low voices, some praising her, others questioning her hesitation. But the question was alive in all of them. Emma sat in the rear of the Humvee, her rifle across her lap, eyes fixed on the desert rolling past. She didn't respond to their whispers. She didn't defend herself, because the truth was more complicated than anyone here could understand. Martinez sat across from her, his young face pale in the green glow of NVGs. He had seen the child too. His eyes still carried the shock of it. He wanted to speak, but the words kept catching in his throat. Stone, in the front seat, radiated fury like heat off asphalt. Every twitch of his shoulders, every clipped order to the driver carried accusation. To him, Emma wasn't a savior. She was a liability. The radio crackled. His voice came steady, controlled, the way only a general's could. "Convoy, this is Overlord. Good work holding discipline under contact. We'll debrief when we're back behind wire. Out." Stone switched off his mic, then muttered under his breath. "Good work, that was hesitation, that was weakness." Emma lifted her eyes to the back of his helmet, quiet, steady. It was a choice. Stone snapped around, his eyes blazing. A choice? That man was commanding the ambush. You had him, and you let him live. You put every one of us at risk because you didn't have the stomach. Martinez flinched, looking between them. His voice was small but certain. "She saved us. She saved the kid." Stone's glare swung to the boy. "You don't know what saving means yet, Private. Out here, mercy gets you killed." Emma's voice was calm, measured. "And killing a child saves you. That what you're teaching him." The silence that followed was a battlefield of its own. Stone's face hardened, jaw clenched so tight his teeth clicked. He turned away without another word. But Emma saw the tremor in his hands, the flicker of doubt he couldn't bury. When they returned to base, wasted no time. Emma was pulled into the operations tent, the air heavy with diesel fumes and sweat. Maps still cluttered the tables, red circles bleeding across the paper like open wounds. Stood with his arms folded, his expression carved from stone. The SEAL Master Sergeant lingered in the corner, silent, watchful. "Why didn't you take the shot?" voice wasn't angry, it was colder than that, curious, testing. Emma stood straight, her rifle slung across her shoulder, her face unreadable. Because there was a child. Studied her. That child was holding comms for an enemy commander. Without him, they don't coordinate. Without coordination, they don't kill your people. Her jaw tightened. He wasn't a combatant, he was a boy holding a radio. The silence stretched, finally stepped closer, lowering his voice. You can't afford conscience in this war. You know that, you used to know that. Emma's eyes lifted to his, steady, unflinching. If I lose that, then I lose the last piece of me that's still human. Something flickered in his gaze. Not softness, never softness, but recognition. He had heard words like those before, from men and women who'd carried burdens too heavy for their shoulders. He exhaled, long and controlled. You may have saved your soul tonight, but understand this, every decision has a cost, and someone will pay it. If it's not you, it will be the men next to you. Don't forget that. Emma didn't answer. She couldn't, because she knew he was right. Choices always carried weight, and sometimes the heaviest weights fell on others. When she stepped out of the tent, the night had deepened. Stars burned cold and distant above the desert. Martinez was waiting near the perimeter, his face tense, caught between awe and worry. You did the right thing, he said quickly, as if afraid the silence might swallow him. Emma leaned against the wall, exhaling. Right doesn't always mean safe. He hesitated. Do you ever doubt? When you're in it, when it's life or death, do you ever question yourself? Her eyes softened, shadows playing across her shoulder. Every time, and anyone who says they don't is either lying or already lost. The boy nodded slowly, absorbing her words like they were scripture. From across the compound, Stone watched. His eyes burned with something darker than contempt now. Resentment, threat. He turned away, disappearing into the shadows of the tents. Emma felt the shift in the air. He wasn't done with her. But the greater enemy was still out there, watching, waiting. The network didn't sleep. They adapted. They learned. Tonight they had tested her resolve. Tomorrow they would strike harder. Emma tilted her head back, staring at the stars. In them she saw his face, his calm, his steady presence. His voice echoed in memory. We don't get to choose the battles we're given, Em. Only how we fight them. Her throat tightened. She whispered into the night, then help me fight them the right way. The wind carried her words away, swallowed by the desert's endless silence. But deep inside, she knew the storm was far from over. And when it came, it would come for her first. Why was the night so still? The desert had a way of whispering its intentions, winds carrying sound, shadows bending where they shouldn't. But tonight, as Emma paced the perimeter, it felt muted. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe but suffocates. Floodlights cut harsh cones across the compound, soldiers moving inside their glow like insects trapped under glass. Patrols walked their circuits. Radios hissed with idle static. On the surface, everything looked secure. But Emma's gut told her otherwise. She leaned into the guardrail, scanning the horizon. Her breathing slowed, each inhale measured, each exhale deliberate. The calm before the storm always felt the same, no matter the war, no matter the country. Martinez approached, helmet under his arm, eyes shadowed by fatigue. He tried to smile, but it faltered. You ever sleep, Sergeant? Emma's lips curved faintly, though her eyes stayed on the sleep, a luxury I stopped affording a long time ago. The boy hesitated, then joined her at the rail. I keep thinking about today. That shot you didn't take. Stone keeps telling everyone you froze, but I know you didn't. Emma finally looked at him, her gaze soft but steady. What you saw was choice, and choice is heavier than any rifle you'll ever carry. Martinez nodded, chewing on the words. He wanted to believe them, needed to. Before she could say more, the radio on her hip crackled. A faint transmission, distorted by distance and interference. But one word cut clear through the static. Phantom. Her stomach dropped. The voice was calm, deliberate, taunting. They were calling her out, not Stone, not Saber, her. Emma keyed the mic, her voice steady. Identify yourself. Nothing, just static. Then faint laughter, cold, confident, and silence again. Emma's fingers tightened on the radio. They knew she was listening. They wanted her rattled. But instead of fear, she felt the old steadiness return, the familiar focus of being hunted by someone who understood her game. She turned to Martinez. Get now. Before the boy could move, the first mortar fell. It landed inside the wire. The explosion ripped the night open, fire and dust swallowing a row of tents. Screams cut through the chaos. Alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled. Inside the wire, someone shouted. Emma grabbed Martinez, dragging him down as another round slammed into the motor pool. Vehicles erupted in flame, black smoke boiling into the sky. Gunfire followed, bursts from the perimeter, shouts of contact east, breach in the wall. The compound fractured into chaos. Emma pulled Martinez behind a barrier, her voice sharp, commanding. Stay low, follow my lead. The boy nodded, eyes wide, rifle clutched like a lifeline. Stone appeared out of the smoke, shouting orders, his voice ragged with desperation. Push them back, hold the line. His face was flushed, his movements erratic. Emma's instincts screamed. This wasn't just an attack, it was a lure. The enemy wasn't here to wipe out Saber, they were here to drag her into the open. She sprinted toward the breach, her body moving with the old rhythm, flowing between cover. Martinez trailed, stumbling but determined. As they neared the gap, Emma froze. The gunfire wasn't random. It was focused, patterned. Suppression fire meant to channel defenders into kill zones. Stop, she hissed, dragging Martinez behind a collapsed barrier. It's a funnel. Stone barreled past, rage blazing in his eyes. Get out of my way, Cross. He a squad charging straight into the breach. Emma reached for him, shouting, it's a trap. Too late. The night erupted. Hidden fighters rose from the shadows, cutting down Stone's squad in a storm of gunfire. Men screamed, crumpled, fell. Stone himself was thrown backward, blood blossoming across his chest. His eyes went wide with shock, the arrogance finally stripped away, leaving only fear. Emma dragged Martinez low, rounds snapping overhead. Her teeth clenched as she watched soldiers die in a trap she had seen coming. Stone gasped, coughing blood, reaching out with trembling fingers. His voice was ragged, broken. Cross. She crawled to him, pressing down on the wound, though she knew it was useless. The captain's breath rattled, his body jerking beneath her hands. Why didn't I listen? His eyes searched hers, desperate, pained. Emma's voice softened, the anger gone. Because pride's louder than reason, even in war. Tears mixed with dust on his face. His hand clutched at hers weakly. Don't let them take it. His words faltered. His chest heaved once, then stilled. Emma sat back, her hands bloody, her breath sharp and unsteady. Another ghost added to the weight she carried. Martinez's voice trembled beside her. Sergeant, what now? Emma lifted her eyes to the breach. Shadows moved, disciplined, coordinated. The enemy pressed step by step, their rhythm steady. Her jaw clenched. Now we finish what they started. She rose, rifle steady, heart heavy but clear. Every shot she fired carried not just skill but something deeper, a refusal, a vow. The enemy wanted Phantom, but Phantom wasn't just a sniper, wasn't just a killer. She was a survivor, and tonight she would remind them why ghosts were feared. The battle raged on. Tracers lit the night like falling stars. The air stank of smoke and cordite. Martinez stayed at her side, his fear tempered by her steadiness. And through it all, Emma felt the past and present collide. The ghosts of, the memory of, the burden of every name etched in silence. War had come for her again, but she wasn't running this time. Not anymore. How many ghosts could one person carry? The question pressed against Emma's chest as the night split open with gunfire and firelight. The breach in the wall pulsed with muzzle flashes. Insurgents pressed hard, their movements too precise for a ragtag militia. This was trained coordination. The network had come in force. Emma braced against the sandbag barrier, rifle pressed into her shoulder, eyes narrowing through the sights. Martinez crouched beside her, trembling but steadying with each breath, feeding rounds into his weapon. His voice roared across the comms. "Hold your ground. Reinforcements en route. 10 minutes, we hold or we die." 10 minutes, an eternity on a battlefield. Emma exhaled slowly, steadying her heartbeat. She tracked one target, squeezed, shifted, fired again. Every round found its mark, not with the mechanical rhythm of a machine, but with the lived cadence of someone who had long ago made peace with the weight of pulling a trigger. Martinez fired too, his aim wild at first, then tightening as Emma's calm bled into him. She spoke between shots, her voice low, grounding him. "Breathe. Don't chase it. Let the rifle settle, then decide." He nodded, sweat streaming down his face, his fear alchemizing into focus. Stone lay behind them, his body cooling, eyes empty. Emma forced herself not to look back. His arrogance, his fall, it was a lesson carved in blood. She would carry it, but not tonight. Tonight she couldn't afford weight. The enemy pressed harder, RPGs slamming into the outer defenses, the ground trembling beneath each blast. Emma ducked, ears ringing, lungs seared with dust. She pressed back up, firing again, her motions precise, unhurried. The storm raged, but inside her the old stillness lived again. Then she saw him. A figure at the edge of the chaos. Commanding, signaling, surrounded by guards. Not the same man she'd killed at Sabre, another. The network didn't rely on one head. It was many-headed, Hydra-like. Cutting one down only meant another stepped forward. But something about him froze her, the way he moved, the way his eyes swept the battlefield. He wasn't just another commander, he was more, the architect. Her pulse hammered. She steadied her rifle, math running itself in her bones, wind, distance, elevation. But just as her finger tightened, movement caught her eye. Beside him, another child, younger this time, barely 9, clutching a satchel of ammunition, eyes wide in terror but locked on him like he was salvation. Emma froze, her throat tightened. The choice again, kill the commander, kill the boy, or hesitate and risk them all. Her breath faltered, her vision blurred. His voice echoed in her skull, "You can't run from who you are, Em, but you can choose how you carry it." Her hands shook, the weight of pressed down, the memory of bleeding out in her arms. She had sworn never again, never another child. Martinez's voice broke the moment. "Sergeant, what do we do?" Emma's jaw clenched, and in that instant she understood. Phantom had been built for one thing, destruction. Emma Cross had tried to bury her under kindness, paperwork, silence, but neither alone could survive. She had to be both. Her eyes sharpened, her breath steadied. She shifted aim, not for the boy, not for the commander, but for the line between them, a thin chain of grenades hanging at the guard's chest. She squeezed. The round struck true. The explosion ripped the line apart, tearing the guards away, the commander thrown to the dirt. The boy stumbled free, unhurt, screaming. For a heartbeat, silence, then chaos. Enemy fighters faltered, their lines splintering without command. The network's careful rhythm collapsed into noise. Emma surged forward, voice sharp, commanding, "Push now." Martinez followed, adrenaline burning away fear. Soldiers behind her, his voice on the comms echoing her command. "Advance, drive them out." The fob roared alive, defenders pushing hard, gunfire unrelenting. Insurgents fell back, scattered, leaderless. Within minutes the tide turned. The desert swallowed the remnants of the attack. Smoke curled above the breach, flames devouring what was left of vehicles and tents. The compound stood, but bloodied and forever changed. Emma dropped to one knee, breath ragged, hands trembling around her rifle. Martinez crouched beside her, his chest heaving, his eyes wide but alive. "You saved him," he whispered. "The kid, you saved him and us." Emma shook her head slowly. "No, we saved him together." For the first time in years she felt it, partnership. Not the ghost of, not the legend of Phantom, not the solitude of Emma Cross. Something new, something whole. Approached through the smoke, his uniform streaked with dust, his face carved with fatigue. He stopped in front of her, studying her silently. "You had the shot," he said finally. "You took the risk and it worked." Emma met his gaze, her voice steady. "Because I refuse to be only one thing, not just Phantom, not just Cross, both, or neither. That's the only way I can fight." His eyes narrowed, then softened almost imperceptibly. He nodded once. "Then fight that way. The world doesn't need ghosts, it needs people who can still choose." The words struck deep. For the first time she didn't feel like she was being dragged back into a role she couldn't bear. She felt accepted, not forgiven, not absolved, but recognized. As dawn broke, painting the desert gold, Emma stood at the breach, her shadow long against the sand. Soldiers moved around her, rebuilding, mourning, carrying their dead. The cost was real, undeniable. Martinez joined her, quiet, his face streaked with grime and tears. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He simply stood with her, shoulder to shoulder, as the sun climbed higher. Emma exhaled. The desert wind carried it away. She thought of Stone, of all the faces she would carry with her until the end. But for once the weight didn't crush her, it steadied her. Because sometimes survival wasn't about burying ghosts, it was about walking with them. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.